All right, these are one of the Maimurim that the Rebbe said, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said in after he was evicted from Russia. Yeah. After he was evicted from Russia, and what was it, in 1927, he was put into jail and sentenced to death, miraculously got out, and shortly after, he was evicted from Russia. And he moved to Riga, Latvia. I gave you the page. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not the, none of that. Zachor es asher asa lacha Amalek b'derech b'tzeischem mimitzrayim. This is one of the 6 things you're supposed to remember every day. Every day it says you're supposed to remember. You're supposed to remember going out of Egypt, and you're supposed to remember how the Jews made trouble for Moshe. And one of the things you're supposed to remember is Amalek. What is Amalek?
Doubt, sadness, frustration.
Okay, not bad. Not bad. We'll see that he's the source of all doubt and the source of all, but you're right, doubt is the big one. Amalek is the source of all these bad things. And so it says, remember what Amalek did. Now, what happened? Who was Amalek? Amalek was a nation that as soon as the Jews got out of Egypt with amazing miracles that happened and all of the world was afraid of the Jews, Amalek attacked them. Unheard of. Amalek had basically no chance of winning. But they attacked the Jews. And it said that they attacked the weak ones that were in the back, Jews. The Jews had defeated Egypt, Mitzrayim, which was the ruler of the whole world. And Amalek suddenly came and attacked them. And it says that it cooled off the whole world for their fear of God. Amalek was, yeah. It depends how, okay. You have to remember what Amalek did to you, B'derech, and the way, B'tzeischem in Mitzrayim, when you left Egypt. Like I say, it's a mitzvah to remember this every day. You have to remember going out of Egypt. You have to remember that the Jews got the Torah. You have to remember where the Jews made trouble for Moshe in the desert. These things, they're all listed at the end of the prayers. It says you have to remember that Amalek attacked us when we left Egypt. And now Amalek nowadays is a nation. We don't know exactly where that nation is. It's a nation that they hate Jews. They hate Jews. That's the thing. They hate Jews. They can't stand Jews. And the reason they hate Jews is because they hate God. And they can't make war against God, so they make war against God's representatives, the Jews. That's the basic, right. That's the basic underlying, deepest motivation that people have hating. Nowadays in the world, anti-Semitism is becoming more and more official and sophisticated, and it's part of culture. It's like a good thing to hate the Jews.
That's not a good thing, because without Jews, there would be no world. I'm going to quote the Lubavitcher Rebbe right now. If there were no Jews, it wouldn't be as the world didn't exist. It would be as the world ceases to exist. It's the name of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Yes,
but these people are they would like that. They can't stand to live in a world where there's Jews, because the world where there's Jews, even if there's one Jew, it reminds them that God exists, and they can't stand to live in a world like that. It would be better for them not to live than to live in a world where there's Jews. Like I know people, it's a joke, but in fact, as I know a person, that they were heavy drinkers or heavy smokers, they were addicted, and the doctor told them, listen, if you don't stop smoking, you don't stop drinking, you're going to die. True story. And they stopped. And then a couple months afterwards, you saw him drinking again and smoking. They said, well, why are you doing that? He says, because life is not worth anything without a good drink, without a smoke. So the same thing, Amalek, life is not worth anything if I have to be reminded that there's such a thing as God all the time. They hate God. That's their nature. And of course, what's the, that's how do you call that, a paradox? God creates people like that. These people are being created by God. But nevertheless, they're being created in such a way that that's their nature. Their nature is that they hate the Jews. And that one of the best examples is, for instance, the Nazis. The Nazis made a very big effort to kill Jews. And they went into places and just looked for Jews. They looked for Jews. Jews ran away into the forests. They looked for them, searched for them. They killed babies. They killed old ladies. They killed people
but
that
there
were...
were ghettos that fought off the Nazis for a while.
There were people that fought back, of course, but no... one of the reasons why a lot more Jews did not fight back, why they didn't fight back, it was because they never would have dreamed that the Germans would have done such a thing. The Germans were so cultured and so proper and so intellectual.
If you want, you can link this idea to the Maccabees.
You can, of course. Let's see what the Rebbe says. Zachor es asher asar lecha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did, the derech and the way, b'tzeichem in Mitzrayim, when you left Egypt. Asher korcha b'derech, that he cut you off on the way. And korcha also means to make you cold. That he cut off the Jews, and he made war with them. Or korcha means also that he cooled off the Jews. The Jews were very excited about God. And came along Amalek, and he attacked them, and the Jews started to get confused. But even more so, it says he cooled off the world. All the world was excited about God, and the Jews told them. Now, the fact of the matter is everything that's written in the Torah, this is one of the big messages of Chassidut. Everything that is mentioned in the Torah is inside of us. Everything. Inside of every Jew is a Moses, Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov. But there's also inside of us a Paro. And inside of us there's a Bilam. And inside of us there's a Korach. Havdil. Korach was a Jew. And there was also Amalek. Every Jew has an Amalek. And Amalek is our big enemy. Our personal biggest enemy. Nowadays, we cool ourselves off. We're afraid of what the world says. We're afraid of ourselves. We're afraid. And there's Jews inside of us. Every Jew has a little Amalek that doesn't like God, that can't stand God. Every Jew has it.
Is that the Yetzer Hara?
That's the essence of the Yetzer Hara, the source of the Yetzer Hara, yes. The very essence of the Yetzer Hara. That is, if you want to say, and we'll see what it is. Let's see what it is, right? In short, what it is total selfishness. Selfishness. A person thinks about himself, right? I am the most important thing in the world. I am God. I call the shots. I. Person. That's that I, that capital I, that's really Amalek.
Is that a symptom of Amalek, or is Amalek a symptom of the Yetzer Hara? It's like the Yetzer Hara.
There's levels of the Yetzer Hara. There's a Yetzer Hara for this particular thing. The Yetzer Hara will convince you to misuse your nature, to get angry, to get etc.
But how many levels of the soul are truly exist today as we speak? Spiritual life.
Soul is never touched. The same exact soul as the time when God created the world is the same exact soul now.
But what if you're not on the same level as that guy?
Everybody's soul, like a human being. Every human being has two eyes, a nose, a mouth, intellect. Every human being has emotions. Right?
They say the eyes are the window.
One minute. The problem is how you use these things. How you use it. Same thing with your soul. Soul depends on how you use it. That's what the book Tanya is for. To tell you how to use your soul to be a happy, productive Jew in this world.
Are your eyes your soul, or your eyes are just part of your body? Because someone told me the eyes are technically the window to your soul.
They're the window to the soul, but they're certainly not your soul. Dead person also has eyes. Okay, let's go. Good?
Good.
Moving with that, so it's understood from this base in two things. B'inyan shel Amalek. Number one, Shamakam Pulato. Where does Amalek hit a person? Like you said, Amalek is doubts. Amalek is egotism, selfishness. Amalek is insensitivity, destruction, self-destruction. Where does this happen? B'derech, when a person is on the way. Amalek's main thing is it hates God. That's his main thing. That's why I say egotism.
But why would God create something to hate him?
God does all sorts of things. I don't know why God does a lot of things, but that's what God does. I don't know why God creates me also, but God creates.
It's hard to understand God's will. If you really understand God's will, you would die and become a
That's not so. That is not so. Here we have the Torah, and the Torah tells us very clearly what we have to do. And God, and you would not definitely, if you understood God's will, the more you understood God's will, the more dynamic and functional and happy you are. But when people go out from Egypt, when you're going out of your limitations, you're trying to make a change in your life, that's when comes Amalek. Amalek is all sorts of doubts, selfishness, fear, anger, etc. that comes out of this selfishness. But Ofen Pulato, and how does Amalek work? How does this force inside of us, and also this nation that's outside of us, how does it work? Asher Korcha, that it cools you off. De'inyanuhu shemakaro shemakarer, that he cools off, he makes cold at the derech Hashem. That's the big problem in the world. What happens in the big problem in the world? God is really good. God creates us. God wants us to be positive. Wants us to be, how do you say, dynamic in the world. He wants us to fix the world up, work in the world, do according to the Torah. Comes along Amalek, and Amalek says, who says God exists? Who says there's such a thing? And who is God to tell you what to do? You can do what you want. Don't listen to this, the rabbis. Don't listen to the Torah. Make up your own Bible. The Torah is dynamic. We have to change the Torah all the time. We can throw the Torah out. We can ignore the Torah.
Halachically, you're not allowed to, because halakha in the Circle Arc says, if you change the Torah, you're off because that is written in the Circle Arc.
Yeah, but listen, you have to understand what you're saying. If a person throws out the Torah, he throws out the Shulchan Aruch with the Apikoros also. You understand?
Yeah, he's an Apikoros. That's what.
Well, one second. Who is he? Who is he an Apikoros according to the Torah? But he doesn't believe in the Torah.
That's why he's an Apikoros.
Good. That's what you say. But that's not what I say. That's what you say, and that's what the Torah says. And that's what. But he doesn't believe in the Torah. So let the Torah say whatever you want. Let it say whatever it wants. Because after you throw everything away, if we could avoid him, the problem is it's part of us.
Then just tell him to stop.
Yes, we'll see. We'll see how to deal with it. It's not so easy.
Then just tell him not tell him to stop.
There are things that are much more, that are much less essential to the soul, and people can't stop. People can't stop smoking. People can't stop the drinking. People can't stop. They have to go to classes.
Tell Rob or tell him to stop.
Okay, we'll see. They have to go to classes and they have to take courses and take shots and all sorts of things, and they still don't stop, right? And that's just smoking. That's just an external habit. A person cannot stop egotism. Egotism always sinks into a person, where a person is always aware of himself and he's rarely aware of God. And so that's what Amalek does. Let's continue. Oven Pula. So how does Amalek work? He cools a person off. That's number one. Number two, the Eitzah Leklipas Amalek. What is the solution to this problem of Amalek? Is Hazechira, to remember. The way you can fix up Amalek is to remember. What do you have to remember? Remember Hashem. Remember something good. It's like if I tell you, I'll give you $10 if you don't think of the word hippopotamus in the next 10 seconds. You can't do it. Because you're going to think, I'm not going to think of a hippopotamus, right? Of a hippopotamus. You're going to think, the only way to do it is, you think giraffe. You have to really think giraffe. Then you won't think about hippopotamus. If you move your mind to something positive, then you won't think of something negative. But here, Amalek, what is Amalek? Amalek is us. How can you remove your mind from yourself? There must be something more real than me.
Is the Torah?
Is there? The Torah is more real than me. I learn the Torah. If there's no me, I can't learn the Torah. Does the Torah depend on me? Do I come from the Torah, or does the Torah come from me? Is the Torah another book in the library? Yes. Does it come from God? Maybe. That maybe is Amalek. And that's part of us.
Everything comes from God.
That's right. Even Amalek does. And we have to fight it. How do we fight it? It says the way of fighting it is by removing your mind to something more real and more important. Remembering. We'll see how to do it. That's what this whole mimer is about. This is, by the way, is a mimer, like we said, from the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. 1934. He said this mimer. This is the mitzvah of remembering what Amalek did to you. In this core, you have to remember Tamid always. Shamalek, that the Amalek inyano, that the whole purpose of Amalek is lekarer, to cool off derech havaya, the way of God. Cool it off. Va'ikar, and the main thing is haderech the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the way when you're going out of Egypt. When you're going out of Egypt, when you're going out of your problems, your difficulties, you want to become more mature. You want to become more excited about God. You want to become more functional in the world. As a Jew, according to the Torah, comes along Amalek and says, cool down. Cool down. Don't get so excited. The Bishah Shemit Orer, that when it arouses in a person, letzeit me'amitzarim, when it comes into a person's mind to go out from the limitations, the gevulim, and the boundaries of his own ego, bo Amalek comes Amalek umakarer, and it cools a person. Now here the Rebbe is saying what Abraham said, that the solution to the world's problems is if people think properly about God. That's, according to the Rebbe, that's the solution to the world's problems. Personal problems, general problems. If people think properly about God, then what happens? People are not as, like you said, uptight. They're not as possessive. They don't get angry. There's not so much hate. A person can deal with his problems. He can look at himself objectively because he has a basis, an objective basis of good to look at himself, the Torah. And he knows that Hashem can give miracles. You have to do what you're supposed to do, and God will give you, like we say every day. Excuse me, and the blessing after eating, that God provides for everything. That God provides for the whole entire world with great mercy. God provides food for all the animals, the birds, the bees, the protozoas. You know what a protozoa is?
What's that?
It's one of these little sub-microscopic creations. There's all these little things called protozoas, and there's all these little cells, and God provides everything. He provides food for everything. And so God will do for us. But there's different types of being provided for. You can steal, you can cheat, you can work on Shabbos, you can also get food. But there's also, if a person does what he's supposed to do as a Jew, God will provide for him. And of course, there's always certain examples that you can be. There is certainly poverty in the world, etc. But we'll talk about that later. Nevertheless, relying on God always comes out better than not relying on God. No, thanks. Ubezachira, when you remember zu atzmo, when you remember this itself, that my doubts and my coldness is coming from a power of Amalek. It's not really real. Dochim, you push away, umeshabrim, and you break the klipa, what's called the evil force of Amalek, the shell of Amalek. Now we're going to explain it. Want to get rid of Amalek, you want to get rid of your doubts, of your false selfishness, and all the bad emotions that come from that. This is how to do it. Then you know. Now the Rebbe is going to teach us how to think properly about God. Hine, Kasiv, it is written, Reishis Goya Amalek. The first of the nations is Amalek. V'acharito, and his end, Adei Oved, he will be destroyed totally. Right. We'll see. Reish is going to Amalek, Ba'achariz Adei Oved. The Amalek who Reishis L'Kol Hagoyim. Amalek is the first, the source of all of the other nations. U'Bahavdalah Mehem, and he is separate from them. True, Amalek did not come in the beginning of the world. There was Cain and Hevel and etc. And there was Noah, Shem and Cham and Yafes. But from them came Amalek. And Amalek goes to the very essence of what is a Gentile, a non-Jew. What is the essence? Now, a non-Jew can, ideally, the ideal of Mashiach is, the Mashiach is going to bring all of the non-Jews to think and to realize and to understand that all of the religions are false and that all of the religions are just selfish attempts at controlling people's lives or sometimes improving people's lives. Could be. Not always, but you're right. In the end, all of the non-Jews will come to realize that, hey, there's God. God is creating us.
That's why they hate us so much, because they're losers, because they denied God at first before Abraham came along.
We'll find out. Listen, I don't know if you call them losers. they rule the whole world, right? The Egyptians ruled the whole world. The non-Jews, the Romans ruled the world.
That's just the way it works. First they came the Romans, then the Greeks.
We'll see. Let's learn. Al derech kamohu b'kedusha, like for instance in holiness. The Kativ, Ani Rishon, Ani Acharon. God says, I am first and I am last. Hine, behold, Ani Rishon, I am first. Hu bechinet soviv kol omin. This is the aspect of God that surrounds all the worlds that existed before there were any worlds. Tezeu makor lebechinet mamalik homin. This is the source of the light of God which creates and fills up all the worlds. Now we know that God existed before the world, right? The world is, according to Judaism, 5,779 and a half years old. According to the non-Jews, according to science or whatever, there's all sorts of different opinions about how the whole world is.
But they're all false. Let's
talk about that later. But nevertheless, the world is, and multiply that 5,779 by 1,000, by 1,000,000, by 1,000,000,000,000, by 1,000,000,000, by this and this. The Professor Viktor Frankl, he brings up a joke. And he brings up a joke. He says that a professor was giving a lecture, and he said that according to science, the world cannot exist more than another trillion years. And one lady in the crowd stood up and said, "What? What? How can that be? I don't believe it. That's awful. That's terrible. How can it be? What did you say?" He said, "I said that the world cannot exist more than another trillion years." She said, Oh, that's coming. I thought you said another 1,000,000 years. All right. And what does it mean? 1,000,000, a trillion? Right? How long is people going to? The idea is the world, however old you want to say it is, it had a beginning. Right? It had a beginning. Now, this is not as 100% so. According to what I learned anyway, the Greeks said that the world did not have a beginning. that there was always something in the world. That's going to be the holiday of Chanukah, but that's not our thing. Now we're talking about Purim. Purim is not such an intellectual holiday as Chanukah was.
It's about woman power.
They said, right. They said that the world always existed, not in this form. It existed in another form. There was ether. There was what it is. Okay. Nevertheless, according to Judaism, Jews believe that God created all being. God created the spiritual. God created the physical. But before God started creating the world, there wasn't a world. What was there? Pure reality. Pure reality that we can't conceive of. In a way, we have to say that God does not exist. God creates all existence. God's reality is infinitely far away from anything that we can conceive of as reality. That's according to Judaism. Judaism says that God's reality is infinitely far away from anything that we can call reality. So God doesn't really exist in any way that we can know. God's not spiritual. He's not physical. These things are all creations. This aspect of God, which is above the spiritual, is called Sovev Ka'omim, how God surrounds the world. This is the aspect of God that gave the Torah.
But there is no safe place of God. The whole world, the whole universe is getting created by God as we speak.
Yes, it is true, but we're talking about what about God himself? The essence of God, who is the creator, not the creation, right? Not the creation. That God himself, the essence of God. That is what we call in the language of Kabbalah, Sovev Kol Olmin, that God surrounds all the world. He is above and defies all definitions. And Shamakor, that the source, Zeh, Hari Eno Kamor Amakor the Seder Shtalshalut. This source of the world, which is called God surrounding the world, Soviv Kalmim, this is not like anything that we can imagine. It is not like the whole chain of creation, spiritual, nothing in the spiritual worlds or nothing in the physical worlds is anywhere remotely similar to the Creator. And that's what that's where the Torah comes from. The Torah comes from God's essence. This is all what we believe. This is all belief. But nevertheless, the Rebbe is trying to tell us, why do we believe this? Because you can't understand it. It's above understanding. It's a thing that you can only grasp by belief. And when it comes down to the basic factual, practical meaning, what does it mean? That the Torah is totally above the spiritual. The Torah is connected to the Creator and not the creation. And God put the Torah in the world in order to make the Creator revealed here. Right? The goal of Judaism is not the spiritual worlds. Even though the spiritual worlds do exist, and after a person dies, he goes to heaven and all these things. That is totally not our business. Our business is making this world a better place. And the only way to do it is you have to understand the spiritual worlds. You have to understand them also to appreciate God's greatness. And also to know that God is not spiritual. God is creating the spiritual. The essence of God is creating the spiritual. Now we're saying here that this aspect of God, which is above the worlds, has its counterpart in evil. And that is a Amalek. Amalek is the counterpart of how God, so to speak, is above any comprehension. And what is this in a simple way? Me. I know that I exist. How do I know I exist? I don't know. How am I so sure that I'm here? I'm just here. Here I am. Can't be explained. It's just so basic and so, how do you say, a given, axiomatic that I exist. Here I am. I don't know if you guys exist, but I exist for sure. Right? Maybe
what happens when you die and you go up to heaven? Do you still exist?
Sure. Personally, the soul, that's a different thing. Now we're talking about the soul. The soul always exists. The soul always is in one form or another form. It's in the body. The way it exists outside of the body is not the same thing as how it exists in the body. Because in the body, it's always being bombarded by the physical world, and you have to react to it, and you have to, right? You get tired, you get hungry. But the soul, when it goes out, doesn't have any hunger or tired. But that's not what this class is about. Talking about spooky things. What happens to you after you die? Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what happens after you're born. Here we are, right? Let's make the most of every second, right? And be happy. So Amalek wants to make you not happy. He wants to make you cold. Amalek wants to cool you off so that you're not enthusiastic about God. Now here we're talking about, and the Rebbe is saying, you have to understand, not only does God exist, and he wants you to believe that he exists, but even more, he wants you to get enthusiastic about him. Like it says, we say every day, you must love God with all of your heart, all of your might, and all of your soul. Let's take a break.